Hey guys, Darkster here with another video for you guys. And yeah, this one's going to be a little different, as you can probably tell, compared to what's already on the channel. I'm going to start covering Magic the Gathering content from this point on, until into the foreseeable future at least. This is going to be a bit of a review. The reason I actually started doing this, or considered even doing this, is when I was getting back into the game. I saw there was a lot of content when it came to, the commander decks and stuff. At least when it came to like value and when it came to unboxing, there was a lot of unboxings of the commander decks, which I never understood because I can just go and look at the deck list and see what's there. And I mean, I don't know, I don't get it. I just don't get unboxings too much, but whatever. That there was a bunch of unboxings and then like the value coverage of the decks, but they never really went into exactly how the deck plays or how it interacts with other decks or any of that. And that's what I was looking for, as someone coming back into the game into a completely new format, which I never played before after like 3 years too. Which deck really would work the best for me? Which one do I like? Which one would I like? Which one would I consider getting? Do I want to consider getting two of them, three of them? Are all of them good? None of that was really covered too well on YouTube or anywhere I looked. But this was one of the decks that I was looking at and really considering getting this one and Plunder the Graves, which is this is the Izzet deck, by the way. This is the Seize Control Izzet deck, which is blue red. The other deck I was really considering getting was the Golgari deck, which is Plunder the Graves, which is a green black deck. So those are the two I was really looking at. For some reason, the Plunder the Graves deck seems to be selling out like hotcakes everywhere. Me and my friend were trying to get it, and we just were not able to get a copy of it for a while. We were just waiting and waiting. It took it took our local store like a week to get them. They sold out pretty much instantly from what it looked like. But yeah, it was a hard one to find. Even on the internet, I think it's a pretty difficult one to find. I don't understand why. Value-wise, it's not the highest, but I think it might be one of the more interesting decks to play, or the more fun deck to play, at least when it comes to Commander. We'll talk about that. I actually have all the decks now. So yeah, I have them all. I'll be reviewing them all. I'm just reviewing this one first because this is the one I had the most uptime with. I've played about 6 full games with this one, and I've seen it played from the opponent perspective about 3 times. So I feel like I have a good idea of the deck, and I can kind of talk about it. I will also have a few videos up of me and my friends actually playing the decks, so you'll see some gameplay of them as well. But here we are with the review. This is the first deck I actually bought out of the current set of the 5 decks. They didn't have Plunder the Graves, like I said, so I kind of decided, I'll just go with my second pick, which was this, and I'm very happy with it. Now, I'm going to start off by saying it's not the best deck to pick up if you're new to Commander or if you're new to Magic the Gathering. If you're new to Magic the Gathering and you're thinking about getting a deck, a Commander deck, and you're thinking about playing Commander as your main format or whatever, this probably isn't the one I would recommend. It's a very complex. The thing about Control is it's just going to be fairly complex. There's a lot of different interactions with the cards. They all kind of work with each other in a way, and then they work differently based on which combination you go with. It's a very complex deck, especially this one in particular, because you'll have a very large hand size due to some of the cards that are on the board. Due to that, you'll have a very large hand size with a lot of mana, and a lot of cards that make your cards cheaper. So you'll have a lot of mana, you'll have cards that are cheaper, do other effects on the board. It's a very complex deck in the sense of, for a new player at least. Actually, I would even say if you're someone that's played, or that plays, Magic the Gathering consistently, but never played Control, even then, I would say this deck could be a little complicated to some people. That being said, if you are really interested in the deck, or you really like the color combination, you really like Control, you're going to love this deck. And even if you're not, if you're considering it, it is actually a very fun deck to play because of those interactions. There'll be so many times I just have I'm holding like a crowd. I'd be holding cards like this many cards in my hand. It's like this. It's like I'm holding half a library in my hand, just being able to play everything in there, having all this mana and so much. I don't know. I love it. I never played Control prior to this, by the way. This is the first Control deck I've ever played in Magic the Gathering, and I think I will be playing more Control going forward. It might not be my favorite archetype, at least, or my favorite deck type, but it's for sure in my top. It's actually up there with right next to Reanimator and Ramp, I would say. I don't know. It's fun. I just enjoy it. But onto the overall deck and how it works out. By the way, right here, this is potential cards you can add in. These are cards I have already in the deck that I kind of switched out, and these are cards you might want to consider also to switch out into I only have single copies of these, so that's why they're not in it already. But this is actually another deck. Well, don't worry about it. Let's start off with the commander, which is Mizzix over here. I actually don't use Mizzix. I tried her, and it's a girl, by the way. If you don't know that, I didn't know that until I read like the flavor text stuff on that in the box. And yeah, basically, she's a girl, goblin. I know goblins had girls, but whatever. Great card, very good potential. If I recommend her as your commander if you're kind of starting the game off. I personally prefer Melik, and that's why Melik's in the special sleeve here. I like Melik a little bit more. I feel like once he gets on the board, he has a little bit more survivability. Just being 2/4, I feel like he kind of gets away from a lot of damage-based abilities like burns and things like that. Whereas Mizzix kind of hits the board, and sometimes I feel like she gets killed off like the next turn over and stuff like that. It's like I don't know, and then I have to pay her again for 6. Yeah, I can get her out onto the board twice at least at 2 different points in the game fairly early. Whereas Melik I can get out once and maybe he'll get removed, but I kind of feel like I get more out of Melik than I have from Mizzix. A lot of times you can actually draw into Mizzix because you have a lot of card draw in this deck. This deck revolves very heavily around card draw, from what I can tell. So you actually get Mizzix a lot into your hand, so you can just play her straight out and have her on the board that way. And if she dies, big deal. You still have Melik, you know? I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. But your results may vary. I actually tried Arjun as well, and he actually works very well when it comes to the overall win condition of this deck. Like there's I'm gonna show you guys the combo that I personally just kind of consistently go for. When I'm playing, this is what I'm trying to go for. If you see me constantly drawing cards with this deck, I'm basically trying to search for the pieces that are going to trigger this combo. And using Arjun as a commander, you only really bring him in when you're going to start winning. Like, you bring Arjun in when it's time to win. But then again, he's kind of useless prior to that. Whereas with Melik, I can kind of take advantage of him a little bit more. And the thing about Arjun is you only need him really for the effect. And you get that effect through some other cards in the deck. So I don't think he works the best as the commander. It's one of these two, if you ask me. I personally like Melik. But what is this awesome, crazy win condition combo in this deck? I'll tell you guys. It's basically making sure you have no maximum hand size. These are the 2 cards that'll help you make sure you have no hand size. I prefer the land more than the artifact, simply because the artifact removal, there's more artifact removal, honestly, than land removal. So if I get this out, and then I say I have like 10 cards in hand, generally you'll have more, to be honest. With this deck, you'll actually have more cards in hand than 10. If this gets removed at some point, I'm discarding a bunch of cards, which is not a good spot to be in. It's just safer to have this. But overall, you want one of these outside, and hopefully no one removes one of them. And also this card, Thought Reflection. This isn't absolutely mandatory for the win condition, or for your win condition, but it helps drastically with it. Basically, the effect is if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. Now, this isn't just for your turn 1, your turn draws. It's off any effect. It's off Blue Sun Zenith. You're drawing 5 cards with Blue Sun Zenith normally. If this is on the field as well, you're drawing 10 cards. It triggers off of any kind of draw effect. Even effects like draw 3 cards, pick 1, put it into your hand, put the rest into the bottom of your library. No, you're drawing 6 cards now instead of 3. Things like that. This will scale off all your cards. Pretty much anything that involves, if it says draw on the card, it pretty much means this will double it up pretty much, which is awesome. Now the big combo here is big hand size, gather a large hand. You're going to gather that basically using Blue Sun Zenith. You're going to slow things down or increase the speed of which you can cast bigger spells and things like that using cards like Goblin Electromancer and Seal of the Guild Pack. These will just make things cheaper for you, allowing you to cast more and more things, have more mana to kind of use on cards like Blue Sun Zenith and other cards. Like you have Treasure Cruise here that'll let you draw 3 cards, things like that. And then eventually, at some point, hopefully you have this on the board already, which means based off the draws, you're going to be drawing double. And then you'll have this in your hand. And hopefully something like Arjun. There are actually just other cards in the deck also that kind of mirror Arjun's effect. But Arjun also is just a good example of that effect. So if you can have Arjun and this guy in the field, hopefully you can get this guy on the field and Arjun same turn, or hopefully you can keep them alive and then get Argent, or just use one of the other cards that have Argent's effect. And basically what you're trying to do is get rid of like 15 cards in your hand. You want to have at least 15 cards in your hand or so. Right, let's count how many of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, so close. 15. Alright, so say you have 15 cards in your hand, and generally, honestly, you'll probably have about this much or more. And around this point in the game, this will be a little bit later on, you'll probably have a crap ton of mana. And around this point in the game, your opponent should be around 30 health, give or take, probably a little less, to be honest. Probably around 27, 30. It should be like the person with the most health should be around 30. And what you're basically doing is, hopefully this doesn't have to be though, but will help a lot. No maximum hand size, that's why you have 15 cards in your hand. You have this guy on the field, you have Argent on the field, and then you just cast some crappy, like, it doesn't even matter, it could be anything. Some cheap card. You can even do this without paying you can do the Phyrexian mana or something. Just cast 3, or this, you don't even have to care about what you're drawing into, but whatever, you can just 2 and then 1. Just to trigger Argent's effect. And what will happen is, I'll read it to you guys. So, whenever you cast a spell, put the cards in your hand at the bottom of your library in any order, then draw that many cards. So that would be these 15 cards. You can switch out the order, but it doesn't really matter because you're kind of winning at this point. You take them, you put the 15 at the bottom, and with this card's effect, you'll actually be drawing 30 now, not 15. But even if you don't have this, you'll be drawing 15. Now, your Psychosis Crawler's effect is, Psychosis Crawler's power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. And basically, all this together means you're drawing 30 cards, you're doing 30 damage to each opponent. That's kind of crazy. It's awesome. It's freaking awesome to use it to. And then you can probably scale into this or something like that. But with this combo, you're doing 30 damage just off of 1 move. And that's if you have 15 cards in your hand. If you have 20 cards in your hand, you do it, you're doing 40 damage. 30 cards in your hand, you're doing 60 damage. It's crazy. You got to be careful not to deck yourself, though. It's very possible that you could run out of cards and mill yourself out and lose. But the thing is, if you kill your opponent in the process of milling yourself out, you technically won. I mean, you die right after, but in the order of things, you killed your opponent first, so you won the match. So, I don't know. I think it's awesome. I love it. It does kind of screw you sometimes in the sense that you might mill yourself out. Sometimes you do really need the pieces. Like, you need these. You know, you have to have at least these 3 and some kind of Argent effect, Argent himself or something else, to trigger this whole thing to go off. And sometimes you might get it early and have to get rid of the card in your hand, and you'll never get it. If you lose Psychosis, for instance, if you lose Psychosis and Crawler or Thought's Reflection, or somehow you never draw into Reliquary Tower, or even Thought Vessel, or Thought Vessel gets destroyed, you kind of ruin your combo, and you can't really do much to kind of bring it back. But in most cases, you do all right. You know, there are a lot of times where I either lose just as it's coming around, or I kind of lost it early. But overall, this deck kind of comes in around second at least. If you're not getting first with this deck, I'd say you're consistently getting second, which is not the worst situation to be in. So, yeah, that's basically the main win condition, how the deck kind of plays out. A lot of card draw, a lot of control. It's a control deck. What do you expect? Now, here are the additions that I personally made for this deck. I'm going to actually start from the bottom because this card is useless. It doesn't do anything for me. Hellion Crucible, you guys could search. I'm not going to read it to you guys. It's fairly useless. I don't recommend it. I just keep it in the deck because it's already in there and I don't want to bother. Brimstone Volley, excellent card for this deck if you ask me. Instant speed, 3 mana. Brimstone Volley deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Morbid, which is basically something died. Brimstone Volley deals 5 damage to that creature or player instead if a creature died this turn. The thing is, this is instant speed, so it can be triggered off your opponents fighting each other too. So if you have like 3 people on the board, or 4, 5, whatever amount of people playing on the board, as long as something's dying at some point, this is doing 5 damage, not 3 damage. Or you can just trade something you got or attack it. You know, you can figure it out and always have this being worth 5 damage instead. And it scales really well off of something like Gutter Snipe here, another addition that I added, where whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent creature. So now all of a sudden you're casting this, everyone gets 2, something gets hit by 5, maybe someone's face, maybe just a creature, doesn't matter. And this can always be on the board and doing things. It is susceptible to removal. Being only 2, it can be burned back pretty much is the problem with cards that are like 2 or less. But excellent card to kind of have out on the board, and works really well with this. Also, something like Reverberate or Increasing Vengeance here do really well with Brimstone Volley as well. Let's say you can Brimstone Volley someone's face for 5, Reverberate, and then Increasing Vengeance them to do 15 damage. Ooh, that's a lot of damage just out of nowhere, you know, just kind of surprise damage. That's what I like about it. So, great card in that sense. Let's kind of get rid of all the burn here. Let's talk about all of them. Another Incinerate, just another straight up burn card. Again, works really well with the Reverberate, Increasing Vengeance effect. You can really help clear out the board if they have a bunch of cheaper creatures on the board, or you can just go straight for face if it's kind of later in the game, which is helpful. It's like if your plan here kind of gets screwed over at some point, you do have some ways to maybe take out an opponent or two. And maybe help out a friend, or even if it's a 1v1 at some point, you can maybe win off of these kind of combos right here. So that's something to look at or consider. Frightful Delusion. This card's kind of scary, isn't it? It's literally frightful. I don't know what it is. I just don't like looking at it. I'm actually gonna put it underneath this after we're done talking about it. Just counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. That player discards a card. It does a lot. It really annoys your opponent. Cancels out an ability. But scary freaking card. I don't know. It's a great card. It's a great card, just scary. Treasure Cruise, excellent card as well. Works really well. You'll always have the mana for this at some point, but you really don't need to because you're going to have such a full graveyard that you can just totally exile a whole bunch of crap out of and get this card for very cheap, and you'll have a whole bunch of flashback effects. And again, bang, right? And bang, and just you can draw a whole bunch of cards, and it eventually helps you search into your win condition here. So excellent. I don't know. I like it a lot. Blasphemous Act, you barely will ever have creatures out on the board, so this will never affect you too much. And even if it does, most likely when you're using it, you're probably removing a whole bunch of threats more than really screwing yourself over. But it does 13 damage, it gets 1 less, or costs 1 less for each creature on the board. Any of these decks, like Call the Spirits, for instance, is a good example in this set, will swarm the board very heavily with creatures, with tokens and all that, and this will just help you clear the board. For that deck in particular, it can actually swarm the deck again, or swarm the board again very easily afterwards. But the thing is, even if it does, basically you want to hold this for the right moment. You want to hold this for the right moment, and then when you pop it, it'll do a lot for you. Mark of Mutiny, another card, it just helps you take control. I think there's about 3 of them in this deck. I think there's 2 already in here, and then I added this separately. I like this because it lets me kind of even out the board, lets me kind of swing in with some stuff early on, or even later on. I can maybe grab something and then swing at someone else, and they can kind of help me kill it. Like, for instance, say if one of my opponents have a creature that's a big threat, but he doesn't attack with it. He's just holding it so he can block things or something. Well, I can take it and attack into another friend of mine or someone else on the board that we have an agreement with that he's going to block with something. He can block with a greater creature, get rid of this creature, and then he has the strongest creature on the board. Things like that. It's the whole thing about Commander is like the whole politics side is that you got to talk to people, you got to team up with people, you got to see how the game goes and negotiate and kind of work with the player base to kind of get your wins. And this almost works as removal / damage in a lot of cases. So yeah, I like it. I like it because it's versatile in that sense. And then these are some cards that I would put in if I had doubles of, but I don't. Actually, I do have doubles of Reverberate. I'd probably put Reverberate in, but I don't have any more doubles of these guys. And these guys are already in another deck. But Reverberate, again, just copies target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new target for the copy. Awesome card. Works really well across the board, if you ask me. So I love it. Again, Increasing Vengeance. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. If Increasing Vengeance was cast from the graveyard, copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copies. Now, Reverberate kind of works for any spell. Right, target spell, yeah, basically for any spell. This only goes for your spells. The thing is, you have all the best spells, honestly. Like, you got all the best spells, so it kind of works really well. And you do have flashback. It's a little expensive for a flashback, but it doubles the copy, so it can get, yeah, you can see where this gets a little crazy, right? Like, you can delve into something, flashback it, double it up, I don't know, it gets hectic. Um, Nightbird's clutches, 2 mana, up to 2 creatures can't block this turn. Helpful for you to lock up your opponent, right? Things like that, and you can flashback it, so you can make it 4 very quickly for very little mana, really. And Infernal Titan. Infernal Titan I like just because he's a big card. 6/6 is decent, and having that +1, it's just something you can put into your deck to kind of hit the board, and people go, all right, there's a threat there now, and it just kind of gives you something to block with, gives you something to swing in with, and do damage, do excess damage out, output. I don't know. I like the card. I haven't actually tried it in the deck yet. I've tried all of these out in the deck yet already, and they work for sure. I don't know how Infernal Titan will fit in exactly, but I feel it would do well. So yeah, that's basically the review of the Seize Control Izzet deck. Highly recommended. Again, not recommended for newer players in general and new commander players or people who aren't used to control. But if you insist on playing it, you won't be upset by it in any way. And if you already play control, this is the deck for you. This is the one you want to go for. I think that's about it. If you guys want to see more content, give me any pointers on how I could have done this better or anything. Leave it in the description. Sorry, not in the description. Leave it in the comments. Tell me which deck you guys want to see me review next. I might prioritize that. The next video you guys will probably see when it comes to Magic the Gathering stuff will probably be gameplay of this and a few of the other decks. But if there's a particular deck in general that you guys want to see the review for, tell me. I'll prioritize the review on that over these ones, and I'll probably play it a little bit more if you guys want to see some particular gameplay of certain decks. But yeah, that's about it. As always, please subscribe, rate, and comment. Links in the description for all my Twitter and all that stuff. And no, yeah, that's about it. Dexter out. Peace. Hey guys, Darkster here with my Destiny the Taken King review. Now, this review is going to go for sure take more of a discussion side of things. I'm not going to be like, here's the